Welcome to Barbara's Bulletin, the podcast where we bring you the latest news and updates from around the world. I'm your host, Barbara, and I'm excited to share today's top stories with you. We're starting off with a significant development in Southeast Asia, where Cambodia and Thailand have agreed to a ceasefire after 5 days of deadly clashes along their disputed border. The conflict has claimed at least 35 lives, including civilians, and displaced over 100,000 people on both sides of the border. According to reports, U.S. President Donald Trump played a role in brokering the peace deal, with phone calls to both prime ministers over the weekend warning that continued hostilities would hurt their negotiations with his administration over tariffs. The leaders of Cambodia and Thailand met in Malaysia, which is currently chairing the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and emerged with an immediate and unconditional ceasefire agreement. Both countries have blamed each other for the fighting, which started on Thursday after almost 2 months of escalating rhetoric following a border skirmish on May 28 that left a Cambodian soldier dead. Thailand has accused Cambodia of breaching Geneva Conventions by firing heavy artillery at non-military targets, killing civilians, including children. Cambodia, on the other hand, has denied these claims and alleged that Thailand had dropped illegal cluster bombs. The dispute between the two countries centers on the ownership of several ancient temples and strategic sites along ambiguous sections of their 800-kilometer border. The conflict has been ongoing for decades, with roots in colonial-era mapping. It's worth noting that officials from the U.S. and China were also present at the face-to-face negotiations, highlighting the international community's interest in resolving this conflict peacefully. As we move forward, it will be important to monitor the situation and ensure that both countries adhere to the ceasefire agreement. The people of Cambodia and Thailand deserve peace and stability, and it's crucial that their leaders work towards a lasting resolution. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Barbara's Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. We're glad you're still with us as we dive into our middle segment, where we explore some of the most pressing international stories. Today, we're focusing on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, an issue that has been at the forefront of global news for decades. As you may be aware, ministers from around the world gathered at the United Nations recently for a conference aimed at working towards a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. The event was hosted by France and Saudi Arabia, and its goal is to lay out the parameters for a roadmap to a Palestinian state while ensuring Israel's security. However, not all countries were on board with the conference. The U.S. and Israel boycotted the event, citing concerns that it would be a gift to Hamas, which has been involved in a 22-month war with Israel in Gaza. The conflict has resulted in significant loss of life, with nearly 60,000 Palestinians killed, according to Gaza health authorities. It's worth noting that the international community has long endorsed a two-state solution, with the UN General Assembly voting overwhelmingly in favor of recognizing Palestine as a full UN member earlier this year. However, the path forward remains complex, and it's clear that there are deeply held differences between the parties involved. As we consider this issue, it's essential to acknowledge the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza, where hospitals are struggling to cope with the influx of patients, and basic necessities like food and medicine are in short supply. The UN has announced plans to use humanitarian pauses to try to reach those in need, but the situation remains dire. As we navigate this complex and sensitive topic, it's crucial to approach it with empathy and understanding for all parties involved. We must recognize the legitimate concerns and aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians, while also acknowledging the need for a peaceful resolution that respects the rights and dignity of all individuals. Stay tuned for our final story of the day, right here on Barbara's Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. We're wrapping up today's show with a look at the latest developments in the Middle East. Syria is expected to hold its first parliamentary election under the new administration in September, according to the head of the Electoral Commission. The voting for the 210-member People's Assembly is scheduled to take place between September 15 and 20. This election comes as part of a broader effort to establish a more democratic process in Syria, following years of conflict and instability. The government has pledged to ensure broad representation and will allow foreign observers to monitor the electoral committees overseeing the vote. Areas outside government control, including Kurdish-held regions in northern Syria and the Druze-majority province of Swaida, will also have seats allocated based on population. The new assembly will be tasked with approving landmark legislation aimed at overhauling decades of state-controlled economic policies and ratifying treaties that could reshape Syria's foreign policy alliances. This is a significant step forward for the country, which has been working to rebuild and stabilize after years of turmoil. It's worth noting that the Syrian government has faced criticism from some quarters about the concentration of power among its Islamist-led leadership. However, the new constitutional declaration issued in March preserves a central role for Islamic law while guaranteeing women's rights and freedom of expression. As we watch these developments unfold, it's essential to approach the situation with nuance and understanding. The path towards democracy and stability is often complex and challenging, and Syria is no exception. That's all for today's Barber's Bulletin. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay engaged.